Okay.
Okay.
So thank you so much for having me, Mr. Mike. This is Asmahan. If I can quickly read your bio before you kickstart, just to know exactly, so that the
Sure.
audience can know exactly who is actually taking this presentation. So let me quickly, uh, since you have already shared your screen, let me just quickly run through it with my phone. So starting with Mr. Mike Hewitt is a level uh, 4 certified water treatment and distribution operator and owner of Almapin Enterprises. And with 23 years of experience in municipal, industrial, and remote environments, has supervised water systems, large urban plants, remote northern communities in the Canadian Arctic, post disaster settings, and also international deployment across East Africa and Caribbean, Chile, and Afghanistan. His work centers on operational discipline, risk reduction, and building operator capacity in challenging conditions. So Mike Hewitt is also government strategist, operations, and water expert. He has been turning complex infrastructure and compliance challenges into award-winning scalable solutions across Canada, Africa, and the globe. Then Mrs. Asmahan Rabo is a Canadian water quality specialist and founder of Needs for Water. She holds credentials in water and wastewater technology, water quality assessments, and humanitarian water engineering. She brings over 15 years of experience in municipal operations, laboratory quality control, and international WASH initiatives. Her work integrates technical assessment with cultural responsive engagement. She's fluent in so many languages such as English, Somali, and Swahili. She works closely with schools, ministries, and local partners, local communities to translate data into practical environments that protect health and dignity. She currently works in Alberta while leading community-focused water projects across East Africa. In May 2025, Needs for Water, an NGO she champions, and Almaquin Enterprises completed a comprehensive WASH survey across 25 Ethiopian schools using WHO UNICEF GMP indicators, which we will learn more about in the course of their presentation. The team assessed infrastructure condition, water quality, sanitation, and access user experience across 4 regions, producing structured findings and evidence-based recommendations for improvement. So you are highly welcome to this webinar, and we hope what you will share will impact communities and also people across the globe. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Usman. We really appreciate this opportunity to present our the 2020 Ethiopia WASH survey. That was 25 schools in 4 regions across Ethiopia. And for this presentation, we will provide a bit of history on the different projects that Asmahan's done leading up to this project. And also we'll touch a little bit at the end on our latest initiative, which is the Community WASH Ambassador Program, which is currently in that
on people can apply to their knowledge in communities and survey. So needs for water, just to give you a small about it, it's basically bridging the gap between the technical expertise and humanitarian needs. And we have completed 13 projects in 2017, where I went and visit my mom, and that was after I completed with 12 quality assessment certificate of so this is the place that she lives. It's Kwale, that's in Kenya, and she has an acreage with a borehole, and she asked me to assess her water and make sure that it's meet the standard, because a lot of community around her area uses this water. So I went there, and basically a lot of things we have found out before that, like a lot of people comes to Africa, they build or they construct the borehole, and there's a lot of factors that they don't consider, such as when you're sort of building or infrastructure or something within the community, as we know that where there's water, the community increases. So most of the time people comes and build the borehole or a well or any sort of the water and forgot about the training, the material that's the sources, a lot of other factors that's included to it. So when I went there, we use verified, which is a test strip that has 100. It sort of gives you the major sort of 17 parameters that are crucial for the water quality, and the coliform also tests for the bacteria. So I went tested, and the good thing is, even though they didn't do the water quality assessment, but the water was good, and I went around the neighborhood as well as, and I tested that water. So that was our first project, to check the assessment of it. The second project, it's Kuala, it's Wasini, which is about 30 minutes away from my mom's place. So I went and assessed that. That was more into terms of, they had a sort of a barricade that they harvest from rain and other sources, and they disinfected with chlorine. So I make sure that it's within the standard that they are drinking, and also do some training, the health risk about it, and share other knowledge for them to assess with the templates. And then moving to project, was in Somaliland. I was invited with the water quality part, and what we did is just went through their work. Right now, they're much better than when I went there 2021. So I assessed their procedures, the lab training, and sampling method was missing. So that was the part that we're working on it, like in terms of how to sample. It should be standard all across in the divisions where they sample, so that it can be consistent on your quality on the water when collected and tested. And the fourth project was, this was in Jigjiga. We moved there about 4 to 5 months. And what we did there, we responded as a humanitarian with helping over 100 families, at the same time training them how to clean, like, as we know, most of the storage that we do in Africa is a 20 liters jerrycan. And a lot of people that when they do that, they store, they sort of put it away that there's no proper sanitation in terms of how to clean. So there's a lot of algae built up. So we taught them how to disinfect and taught them how to test. So most of the things that we do is not only we're going there to help them, but to leave something behind that when we moved out, somebody can continue sort of training them or access of testing those kind of water samples around the neighborhood. And then the fifth project, this was in Hurshid, like every year, sort of it happens, there's a flood. So this is make sure that after the flood that they have a barricade that they store water. So the barricade and the borehole is not impacted, the wells are not impacted. So I had to make sure that we tested different sites to make sure the water was good enough for them to drink. And then the sixth project was not far from it. It's called Dusmale. It's a small town with a few hundreds people. So that one as well, we just tested, make sure that the water is good enough, because they have sort of somehow of cross connection of the place sometimes where there's a water for the animal would be drained, and those are the only thing that I found out was, so we trained them how to separate and there's no connection between the animal drinking point with the human consumption. And the seventh project, this is a guy just reached out from Linton and wanted to see us to see the lab results. So what he was doing is sending samples, a lot of samples without knowing what was the problem. So when he came to us, we look at his lab results, we figured out he spent a lot of money just sending sample without knowing exactly what was the problem in the water. So we recommended, again, verified test strips. You get 100 of them for about $50, but it's worth it because it will give you the higher concentration or the lower concentration. So, and it's about 17 parameters. So you only send the sample that is out of the range or within suspected range that you need to test. So this really cut down the cost of him and helped him moving forward. And then project 8 is where we did the World Water Day. We went to Yeka school. This was an eye-opening, like with Ethiopia, there are about 40 million students and 137 million population. And a lot of kids, I found out they love to be a doctor. So this was an opportunity for us to go in there, not only to help them awareness of the World Water Day, but to see those kids and introduce part of, because most of those kids, they've never seen a beaker, they've never seen an instrumentation of testing different parameters. So we brought our instrument with us, pipettes, different lab tools for them to see and how we tested from their water to different types of sources of water. And also we sort of, like with the Ethiopia, right now it's better the last 5-6 years. But prior from that, in grade 8, you write an exams as an entrance that will take you to high school. And that exams, it's in English, while from grade 1 to grade 7, majority is in Amharic, only one class in English. So kids, a lot of them found out it was difficult. So we took about 7 to 8 years of the exams and took the key points of the exams in English and translate in their own language, so that when they're doing the exam, they can be familiarize themselves with the keywords and help them to progress and pass the exams. And then project 9, this is one we attended the One Wealth workshop. This helped us because they had different stakeholders that show up, and we learned a lot of things in terms of the water security, water, and different part of the countries and within the Ethiopia itself. And we were connected and moved on from there. And then project 10, this is where it's Ethiopia setup. Needs for Water went there and be part of the showcase sort of, and we met a lot of key stakeholders. Sort of Minister of Health has a Department of Sanitation. So we were introduced there and sort of reached there. And that was the beginning of the publicity to move completely with a discussion with Mike Hewitt that doing the community work, it's really effective, but you can only solve about 50, luckily 50, but majority less 10 to 50 families. But going to school, by minimum in Ethiopia, a lot of school, a minimum population you have is about 1,000 students or 4,000 students that we have surveyed. That you can tap in a minimum of 250, minimum of 250 families. So by educating those kids showing them how the sanitation works, how the water quality, how cross connection, how the contamination, they can pass that knowledge to their family. And there's no better advocate than the student to do that. So Project 11, we went to Oromia region. Again, we tested the water, and we found there's a lot of a gap in between the wash and the water quality, and we put our recommendation on there. And then Project 12, this is a project that we did a big project that we'll talk about today. It's 25 schools with 4 different regions, and we applied in INWISE and JMP.
Morning, where are you?
And then Project 13, where we went to Ghana with the Operators Without Borders and do an assessment. So mostly I was focusing on the lab, the quality management, how they do their SOPs, the standard procedure operations, how they sow, how they evaluate their work, how they meet the requirements of what it's required. And then now with Project 14, so every project we try to learn something and increase. So this Project 14, we give the ownership of the ambassadors, the people within the community, to run the project by giving them different tools. We have a mentor, we have water quality, civil engineering, a teacher. So all of us with the people, the person who's leading will get the support from all different angles and come up with a solution as to how they can integrate all these aspects and make that community sustainable for the next years to come, not only right now. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Asma. That was a great overview of all the past projects and the current one. So the next set of slides is going to be focused on Project 12, which is the WASH survey of the 25 schools. So this is one of the first pictures that we took when we were there. And as it turned out, this school, which is Menelik 2 Secondary, was the first modern school in Ethiopia. We didn't know that at the time. It was afterwards that when researching the school, that we realized this was also the first modern school, and it was the first school that we surveyed. So that was quite fitting. It was established in 1908 and had about 7,000 students. Asma had mentioned that we incorporated water quality testing in our survey, and here she is collecting some samples of water, and she has the test strips there. And the test strips are they're not precise as it would be collecting samples and sending those to a lab. And we talked about sending samples to a lab, but due to time constraints and budget, we decided to keep going with the strips and include that data. And what it would do is be indicative results. So if something was out of spec, then that would be investigated, and the government or the school could do a further investigation as to what is going there. So as you can see, there's different color pads on these strips, and each one of those represents a different test. Here's one of the volunteers interviewing one of the students. What we had developed was a survey that looked at the experience that both students and staff had with water, sanitation, hygiene, solid waste. It's a fairly comprehensive survey. Prior to the going out and doing the field work, we had weekly meetings at least for almost a year. And what that allowed us to do was really become organized. So when we hit the ground, we had 2 weeks, and we were able to do a lot of work within those 2 weeks because we had done all that to do. The very first morning we were there, we got our thoughts together. We had a meeting at the hotel. And then afternoon, we went to Menelik School, and we just began. It was a little at the beginning, it was a little, we had to sort of, this was the first time that we had all met as a group. We had met over on the Teams chats for a year, but we had never met as a group. So here we are at the end of our survey at Menelik's 2 school. We had put together 3 of these banners, which helped identify who we were, and we'd sort of set up a station where we conduct the interviews. And our T-shirts and these banners were set up that area and let everyone know what we were doing. This is the second school. This is Kokebi Tasabi Secondary and Prep. You see the banners all rolled up there. We had also had a letter from the Ministry of Education that gave us permission to go to these schools and conduct these surveys. And that document was instrumental in providing us access to all the different schools. We had 25 schools selected. Out of those 25, only 1 school we were unable to conduct our surveys, but we were able to add another school. And so we still conducted 25. At this school, there was a sign here that had a quote from Nelson Mandela that was quite fitting for the work that we are doing. I'll just read it out. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So it was a really fitting quote for the work that we were doing because we were at schools and we were looking at water quality, conducting water surveys to get people's experience. And it was quite fitting quote. So at this school, we also set up, again, stations. We always had to adapt what our areas we conducted the interviews looked like. So here we used a tree there to hold up the banner, and there are some benches. This is another volunteer. This is Peter. He's has his own um, business in which he tutors students. And we had volunteers from different countries. Asma and I came from Canada. Peter came from Kenya. We had another Abu Bakr came from Uganda, and then we had some folks in Ethiopia as well. So it was quite an effort involving people from different countries. And we all flew into Addis, head up, and then we started the surveys. Here's what was once a fountain there. It was dry at the moment, but we also used that as a platform to conduct our surveys. This is Dr. Mulgeta. He's and you see everyone's got these phones in these photographs, and the next photo is Abu Bakr from Uganda, and he had uploaded our entire survey into what was called Kobo Tools. And what that allowed us to do is we were all independently able to conduct surveys simultaneously. And all that information was uploaded. And from there, in that database, we could run metrics and analyze it. So there was no writing on pieces of paper and then having to, in the evenings, transcribe that information into an Excel sheet, for instance. It was all collected using Kobo tools on our phones. And we also did have the paper. And what the paper was, there'd be one version in Amharic and another version in English or different languages that we could use so that if the person, if we spoke different languages, we could still conduct the survey because the questions were the same in the same order on those pages. It's just they're in different languages. So that worked quite well. Here's Asmahan with a student. This photo's an interesting one because I had approached this student earlier that morning asking her if she was interested in conducting the survey, and she declined, but Asmahan was able to get a hold of her, and then after they conducted the survey questions, we took this photo. So here's a couple other volunteers. We also did conduct infrastructure surveys. So here we are looking at the water tank that this school used. There's some of the schools, most of the schools had these tanks. Some of them were on city water and some had wells. We also looked at hand wash stations. So as you can see, Asmahan's taking some notes there on observations on the hand wash. This particular school had no concerns with water quantity, and it was later on that we discovered it had a well on site. Some of the municipal water, sometimes they did have experienced shortages, but this school never had shortages, which we found to be interesting. And it was because they had this well on site. Here we are again at the end of the surveys for that school, holding up the sign. This is the third school. This is Yeka School, which is also the site of Project 8. So Asmahan had some previous experience with this school. And because of that, we actually incorporated the teachers in helping us conduct the surveys. And that really amplified our efforts because there was three teachers that offered to assist us with the surveys. So here's Yeshi in the yellow headdress there. She's helping us conduct surveys and basically doubled up how many we could do. Get another photo at Yeka School. And in addition to, as I said earlier, in addition to uh, conducting the surveys with students, we also interviewed staff as well. And here we had the advantage that we were using a room here that had chairs and tables, so it allowed us every school had a slightly different environment where we set up our interviews. We also had some other volunteers in Ethiopia that assisted us with conducting these surveys. Here's Dr. Zion, who had previously worked with Asmahan at Yeka. So she's helping us with some surveys here. This is at the fourth school, which was Stanford, which was the first private school, one of two private schools that we had on our survey. And here they are conducting water quality testing. Asmahan and I weren't at this particular school that day, but we had trained the volunteers on how to also conduct the water testing, and that amplified the amount of areas we could cover. So here they are taking a water sample and recording the results. And that was taken at the end. This is another school. I believe this one is Menage in Menai Etage. It was a all-girls school, a boarding school, actually. So we're conducting the surveys there. And as I mentioned, Asmahan and I were not at the school because we were at a different one. This is Jerusalem. So we had split into two groups. And this school had a lot of construction that was going on in the road in the front. So it had prevented, well, it had stopped the connections. All the connections to the city water were dug up, so they no longer were connected. So they were using a lot of water tanks. And so they'd have trucks that would deliver the water and bring it in. Here we are just entering the school. Here's another one of those tanks that they used. And this slide here is the 20-liter jerry cans that were being used to transport the water around because none of the taps are working. So this is where we decided would be the best place to conduct the test. What Asmahan has in her hand there is what we call a presence absence test. You add a sample of water, it will turn yellow, and then you would leave it to incubate over time. And within I think 24 hours,
24 hours.
if there were bacteria within that water, if there was bacteria within that water, it would turn pink. So that would be, we'd call that a positive. And even though the word positive sounds good, in a presence absence test, that's a bad thing. So we like to use the word adverse. If it stays yellow, that means the chlorine is doing its job. It's killing the bacteria. If it turns pink, we've got microbiological contamination. We're still in Addis, which is the capital. And all the water there was very good because it was predominantly connected to the municipal water supply with the exception of this school, but they were still getting water that was chlorinated. When we went to the other areas, which were more rural, we did not get such favorable results, which we'll look at later. And here's that, when you walk into the girls' boarding school at Asmahan, there was a large fence that was around the compound, and it was almost as soon as you cross the threshold, it was much calmer inside the school. All the busyness of the traffic was all behind you, and it was a very well kept school. Very clean grounds. There was some small scale farming. They had some livestock. There was cafeteria, dormitories. It was all basically self-contained and very clean, very orderly. She took us around the grounds, and she also took us within the school, so we got to see the classrooms, the library, the chemistry lab. There's a bunch of different the computer lab. She took us all around, and so we really had a thorough tour of that school, which is fantastic. And here there was a small area outside. Temperatures in Ethiopia are generally fantastic, so we set ourselves up here. There's lots of chairs, tables, and we conducted the surveys. This is a small water filtration unit and a UV that was, each of the dorms had one of these. So here I am having a look at it. I'm just confirming the operation of those units. Here again is those test strips. Asmahan is taking some samples at a hand wash station. The next photo here is we're now out of Addis, and we went, as a group, we went to the Oromia region, which basically surrounds Addis, and we conducted some surveys in Bishaftu, which is just south of Addis. So here we are. It's the early morning. We're just leaving the hotel. This is the first school. We we arrived here. We got ourselves set up. This is Times Choice Academy. So it was the first school that we looked at outside of Addis. So again, this is first thing in the morning. We're getting ourselves set up, and we start conducting the interviews. Three other volunteers joined us to conduct surveys. These were colleagues of one of the original staff members we had. And so again, that amplified our efforts. We were able to conduct more surveys. So we set ourselves up. Here's the tables. We're using rocks to hold up the banners of the site. We got more and more creative with how we did things. Again, it was surveys of both staff and the students as well. And we were using the 2 pages, which helped us. This school was interesting in that when COVID happened, there was a lot of emphasis placed on hand washing with water and soap. This is after COVID, obviously. And this was the only school where those practices were encouraged. And so each of the students had their own container in which they brought their soap, and they had good connections to the town water. And so we saw a lot of hand washing at this school, which was really encouraging to see. And one of the things we were thinking of when we do subsequent visits to Ethiopia was maybe do a bit of fundraising and get, come over with a few hundred bars of soap that we could distribute to the students. It's a very small thing, but it would have, I think, a very large impact. We also started to involve the students in the testing. There was a lot of interest in what we were doing. So here we encouraged them to not just see what we were doing, but to also conduct the test themselves. So you can see with a lot of interest, we gave them a chance, an opportunity there to test the water themselves. And we did that with a number of the students, and they were just quite thrilled. And here's Asmahan. This school had different hand wash areas, as they all did. And you can't see it in this photo, but this was in the kindergarten area of the school, and right all around Asmahan, there was a large number of kindergarten kids, all very curious as to what she was doing. So after those schools, we took a bit of a break because there was a weekend, And this is one of the Kariftu resorts. There's Asman, is it 4 of them or is it 5 throughout
I think
Ethiopia?
5. I'm not sure. 5, I think so.
5, yeah. Yeah, so this is the one in Bishoftu. Uh, Excellent place. I had a very different image in my mind what Ethiopia was before I went. This is largely influenced by what I saw in the 80s when there was a war there and there was a lot of poverty and starvation. And when I went to Ethiopia, I realized that it's very different than that. There's some photos that will be coming up showing the airport, very modern, very large. There's leading from the airport, there's a boulevard, hotels on either side. These Kariftu resorts were absolutely fantastic. We, as a group, we rented some kayaks and it was on a lake, and so we paddled around and had a really fun time and also a very good meal there. So we took a video at the end here, or a picture photo at the end. So after this weekend, we had now a week of field work under our belts, and we decided, what was always the plan, we split into 2 groups. And this was done because we had a limited amount of days to conduct these surveys. And so Asmahan, Abubakar, and myself, we flew east to the Somali region, and the other group, the remaining part of the team, they went south to Aberminch. So we completely split into 2 groups. Here we are at the airport leaving Addis. The other group traveled via land to Aberminch, but that would have been a very long bus ride for the group that was going to Somali. Here we are. We've arrived now at the regional airport in Jijiga. Just getting. That's the Wilwal Airport. There's a lot of construction in this area. There's a lot of all over Ethiopia. We saw a lot of upgrades and construction and improving. Even the next slide here showing the university, which was our first stop. There was more construction going on there. And it was a great thing to see. We went to Jijiga University where we met uh, a professor there he had an entomology laboratory. So it wasn't water quality per se, but it's a related field because he was studying mosquitoes and looking at the impacts that that had. So it was very interesting to see the lab, and it was also a very beneficial trip because during that trip, we were able to recruit another 3. These are university graduate students, and this greatly enhanced how many students and surveys we could conduct because in this area they spoke Somali, and the only one of our group that spoke Somali was Asmahan. Certainly didn't speak any Somali. I learned a few words, but all these grad students spoke English and Somali, so we were really able to, with a lot more ease, conduct those surveys. Also, this slide here also shows a human demonstration of the exponential function in reality there with the different heights. After meeting the professor and the grad students, we went for lunch and excellent meal, excellent food. In addition to looking very good, this meal uh, was very delicious. Asma, did you want to say a few words? In the background there in the blur, you can see the injera, which is it's a very traditional Ethiopian meal.
Yeah, Ethiopia, I think
Asma, did you have any comments on?
sure. No, like Ethiopia overall, I think it's one of the healthiest. Like I've traveled different places, and their meal always incorporate not only meat, but these benat, that means different vegetables, and I found to be very healthy, very attractive, very tasty food in Ethiopia. It doesn't matter where you are in Ethiopia. Traditional is very valuable.
Yeah, it was excellent. So now we're at our first school here. This is Sheikh Abdessalam, I believe it was. So we're meeting with the director here. We've shown them the letter that we have from the Ministry of Education, and we're just having talking with him what it is that we plan on doing that day, where he suggested a place we could set up. And we generally did this at every one of the schools. There was a meeting with the principal or director just to introduce ourselves, let them know what we were doing, and get some guidance from them on a good place to set ourselves up. So here we were able to set ourselves up in the library, which was good. It had lots of chairs, tables, as you can see from this photo here. It's quite a large group that we start to, by this time we had gotten very efficient with conducting the surveys. Another group photo at the end. Set ourselves up in another classroom. I think this was the community school. We just set ourselves up in one of the classrooms. The principal here took us around. This school is interesting because there was kind of the old portion, that was currently in use, and right adjacent to that property was a brand new building that they were putting together, and they were, I'd say, probably a couple of weeks away from finishing it. They're still doing landscaping outside. The structure itself had largely been done. Nothing had been moved into the rooms, but the rooms were finished. It had water. He showed us all around the new rooms, the new library, the washrooms, and it was right up to the roof to show us where the water tank was situated. So it's good to see that. At that school, there was an underground tank, concrete tank that was outside. There was a pump there that he turned on, and this is where the water came from. Now, unfortunately, what we noticed in this area was all the water seemed to be high in nitrates and nitrates. And it wasn't just one school, it seemed to be all schools. And all the schools were supplied with trucked water. So we speculate that it was all coming from one source, and that source, because the water tested almost identical or very similar in all the different areas. But it had high salinity, high nitrates, and high nitrates. This is another school here. Ahmed Gurey, is that correct, Asman? I think that was the name of the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on another day here. So again, here in this one, we set ourselves up beneath these trees, which is a nice location, a little bit of shade. There's a lot of these chairs here, so we conducted the surveys there. Set ourselves up. Again, you can see the phones that we're using to collect all the data. This is a good photo showing just as we conducted the surveys, more and more students would congregate where we were, and we had to periodically get everyone to disperse because when we conducted the surveys, if everyone was which was the best solution, or in a much smaller group. So, but it happened over and over. As we conducted the surveys, more and more students would congregate, and they'd all be just curious what we were doing. Another group of students here. The next slide is at this school, as was the case with all the schools in the smaller region, they relied on tanks. And this is an underground tank here where the students were using that pail and they're filling up their water jugs. There was a lot of activity around this water tank, and we had a lot of questions about it. Not all the students or staff used the water from this tank. Here's another photo showing. So we went there and we collected some water samples ourselves, and we began the testing. And in this photograph, in almost all the other photographs, Asmahan is smiling, but she's not smiling in this one here. I think because she's not liking what she's seeing on those test strips, and that was the high salinity, the high nitrates, and the high nitrates. Asman, did you have any comments on the water quality of the school?
In Somali region, not specific on this, but I'm going to overall about the region. In Somali region, they have a place comes from the wells called Dagahbur, and because of the transportation, there is an issue mostly on how to handle proper handling. Those are the things that we might be focusing, even though we have handed in So proper from the source to the end part of the user, there's a lot of activity. Take it for going to the bathroom, for drinking. So the source of contamination, there's a lot of human contribution, not only from the source, they're coming from the well itself.
Yes, that was great points. The other thing we noticed was, and there's some slides further on that will show the presence absence test, is because the water was sitting in these tanks and it wasn't connected to a municipal system, the chlorine was usually very low or absent, and what that allowed was bacterial action to develop. It was not a good thing either. The principal here, he took us around the grounds. Yeah, Ahmed Guri. So this is us at the end there. This is Hussein Giri. Here's Asman with a group of students. Did you want to speak to this photograph, Asman?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I highly encourage anyone who's doing a survey or dealing with WASH, make sure you're connected with your stakeholder. Make sure you're connected with the people. If you, the student you survey, they're sort of like here, I decided to sit with them on the grass to show them the same level I am with them, just looking, sitting down, eye on eye. This will encourage the kids or the students to more engage and more involved in telling you about what's the problem, what the issue, because we survey different ways from the hygiene to menstruation to the water sanitation to the waste management. So by just involving with the stakeholder, that will open a lot of ways on how to improve for that school or particular any other source of your survey.
Excellent points. So the next photograph, this is the team that went south to Aberminch. So they're setting up a school. This is Mojo Fana Secondary in Aberminch. This is in southern Ethiopia. How long was the bus ride? Was it 5 hours for them to get there from Addis?
I'm not sure about
Asman?
that. No, I'm not sure. Like that's the second group that they took it from.
Yeah.
You mean Addis to?
Yeah. Aberminch.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I
That
think it
one
was
I
around
have to
5.
ask you.
It was 6 hours.
Oh,
Okay,
hey,
6
hi,
hours.
Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, Peter was one of the team members who went to Aberminch. So here they are collecting samples from the water from the hand wash station, and they've got the at the end they took a photo with the banner. This is Kukura Laftu, also in Aberminch. You can see the test strip bottle there in their hand. They're collecting water samples and recording the results. Again, there's a sampling tap. There's Jamal. He's one of our volunteers. Again, lots of interest from the students, what we're doing. You know, you have these large groups around you, everybody curious. Here they are collecting water samples at another school. I think this is Mojo. There's Mojo and there's Mojo Fauna. They're two very similar. At first I thought they were the same school, but they're actually different schools. And again, we're, whatever we could find that we could use to set up these surveys. Here's a table and some chairs, and they set up the banners so we could identify ourselves. And we just conduct those surveys. This picture almost looks like they're news anchors conducting, talking about the news of the day. Again, typically we take these photographs at the end, just showing the students, the banners, and then the volunteers that helped collect the samples and conducted the surveys. This is at the beginning I said we had to drop one of the schools that we weren't able to access, and so we added this school, which is Marantha Primary School, also in Aberminch. And here they are collecting. You see the white water tank there, 5,000 liter, and then connected to this hand wash station. And one of the students there is actually washing his hands. So the water quality test results. Ethiopia's national drinking water standards, they do align with World Health Organization. So that gives them clear targets, what to hit with their water quality. Asbaba and Abraminch generally showed good results in the metals. I had mentioned in the Somali region they had elevated levels of nitrite, nitrate, and salinity. And we did see some isolated instances where the pH was maybe a little out of spec or manganese or copper. And the main copper could be maybe the plumbing or the source water if it was groundwater, again, also with the manganese. The next slide here shows those presence absence tests. So yellow is good. That's a negative result. That means there's no bacteria in the water. That's what you want to see. And those are all from Addis. Well, actually, Times Choice, the one in the very middle is from Oromia. The ones that are pink, that is showing a positive, which means that there is bacteria present, and those are all from Somali region. And we have another set here from South Ethiopia, and some were good and some showed presence of bacteria. Asman, did you have any comments on the water quality here, the presence absence tests?
No, that was done in Arbaminch, and out of the 6 school, only 4 parts, and mostly again is how the disinfection of chlorination absence on the water.
Yeah, that was a big thing. And one of our main conclusions will supply, and primarily that was for quantity of water, and also you had the chlorine. And there was also, we noticed some plumbing issues in a lot of the schools. Some of the, well, in some cases, a lot of the hand wash stations didn't have any running water. The next slide here, the next slide here shows the results of our surveys. So Abu Bakr, our volunteer who put everything into Kobo tools, he was able to go in there and collect all the data and produce these great charts showing the times to the lighter colors, which were never, and then the gray there, which on the far right would show don't know, and then there's another color there for not applicable. But you can see we started with their experience with water. There's 1,002 was our sample size altogether. That includes the students and the staff. And you can see the water, annoyed with water problems, unable to concentrate due to thirst. They feel thirsty. Water can make you sick. And you could see what their experience was with the water. And we feel this is very good information that in addition to conducting the infrastructure and doing the water quality tests, is how the users felt about the system, what their thoughts were. So we collected water, some questions on sanitation, predominantly were there enough toilets, were the toilets clean, how they felt about using them, some questions on hygiene, which is focused on the hand washing, some questions on waste management. And there's also a large section that was on menstrual hygiene, which is a large contributor to experience surveys. Okay. So when we were in Addis, we stayed at a hotel here. That was the Sierra Maria Hotel, and very gracious hosts, excellent facilities. So we decided to present a certificate of appreciation before we left. And they also, when we returned later that year to give the presentation, they provided a conference room free of charge for us to give our presentation, which was really fabulous. By that time, we had explained our project, and they were very supportive of the work we were doing. Asman, do you have any comments on overall the survey that we did
No, it was,
Addis?
no, it was good. In just a summary, we have found that 35% of the students were satisfied, and about 45% they were able to wash their hands. Those are the numbers that really strike, and the only way you can find is through the survey of different parts. So the soft skills is very important before the hard skills. A lot of people go to infrastructure, but make sure you do the soft skills first. Make sure you get all the information before you start building a well or doing anything with the well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good. Great points. Here we are, we're presenting the report. Is it 141 pages? We had photos, we had the results, the water chemistry. We included in that report was the survey results, and we gave that report to the Minister of Education, and here has just received it. So what we saw, there was some conclusions that we developed from the survey. And Asmahan already spoke to that first point, that getting that student and teacher feedback gave us, in addition to the water chemistry and the observations, it was just how did the users feel that use that system day-to-day basis. It really will help inform decisions and add a lot of value to that report. There were differences in the infrastructure quality, particularly in the rural areas compared to the urban, which would be Addis. Some schools did face challenges: pipe corrosion, broken pipes, inconsistent disinfection, or also limited hygiene and facilities. And that's referring to a lot of those hand wash stations that were there, but they just didn't have any water supply to them, so they weren't being used. And these findings highlight where focused investment in training. So that training piece, I think, is very important, and increasing awareness and education. And that is just, that's where we see a lot of impact could be developed. So within the Ministry of Education, here's Lawam. She was head of their WASH department. She actually reviewed our report, and she was so thrilled with what she saw there. She has also asked to participate in future projects of Needs for Water. So she's an active member of the Community WASH program, which is our Project 14, which we'll talk a little bit about here at the end. So that was great, really seeing, people that looked at our report, just they liked what they saw, and they wanted to also contribute to what we're doing in the future. So in Addis Ababa had the best, very good water. It was from microbiological perspective, it was all safe to drink. That just demonstrates that there's effective chlorination and maintenance. And collecting all that data and turning into action, which is these, and focusing on the schools so that you start with the students, they become more aware of water quality, all those sorts of things. And when we asked a lot of students, they were focused on becoming doctors. That seemed to be the #1 profession. But by going there and talking about WASH, I think that sends a powerful message to the students that there's other alternate career paths available, and water is certainly one that is going to be a growing field. Asman, do you have any comments on that impact
No, it
or
was
that side of
very,
the survey?
no, just an additional, it's very, like, it was very thrilled to see how a person comes with a different, like, they all want to become a doctor, but just mentioning for them that without a hospital, if there's no water quality, you can't become a doctor. If there's no sanitation instead of collection, there's no sterilization, there's no operation. So connecting those two, they thought, okay, maybe this is like, we might not influence all of them, but within the water industry, you can become an engineering, you can become a lab, you can become a technician. Like, there's sort of so many fields within the water industry. And these are the things that we have to encourage most of our students to grow in mind, not only when they're in university, but at a younger age to think about the water, because they're the future of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very important for sure. The next couple slides here, we're going to introduce the current project, which is 14. Maybe Asma, if you want, I've got 3 slides here on Project 14. Maybe if you'd want to speak to these ones.
Sure. We're running out of time, but I'm just gonna, like, these are the different, like, so we collected with Project 14 is the the individual that will run the project itself. We'll just give them the tools that we collected from the soft skills, and they will come in with their proposal and sort of build from them to see the conclusion. So there's innovation would be included. The mentor, they'll have the mentor. There'll be different aspects so that the community, so that individual as an ambassador coming from that community, first of all, he'll earn or she'll earn the trust within that community and building something within their own means from coming different sources. So this is very interesting project that looking at from the ground to the end of the conclusion to see how can they maintain that to the years to come from there.
And we've also sort of widened the lens here. We're focusing on a few different countries here now. It's Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya predominantly. And we've got 2 projects here that are in early stages. And both the ambassadors, the individuals that are going to be responsible for these projects, they're both very young, and which is really encouraging to see that level of enthusiasm and interest in this industry. So here there's the first project here is looking at some villages there in Uganda, and there was a meeting with the community there just to discuss how they're looking at water, the management of it, of a shared spring. And we're going to sort of use this model to help put together, improve. What we're looking for is basically sustainable local solutions to a wash aspect that will improve the community. And we've asked the ambassadors to, in a rural area, to put together a budget, a list of materials, the labor, the cost of getting everything there. And we've set a small budget for them to stay within. And we've had now 2 come in with some great ideas on what they could do to really provide a positive impact to a community. So this is the first project here in Uganda. The second one is one in Kenya. This one here is actually the village where the volunteer is from. So and she's currently now in university in Nairobi, and her brother is actually in this photograph, the soccer team, and they're looking at basically augmenting their water supply with the rainwater harvesting. So this is another small project that is sustainable and with local materials that they can maintain. And that is, did you have any further comments on Project 14, or the next site's the last one for questions?
No, that's we're just eager to see the innovation. And one of the thing about needs for water, we don't have an age cap. You can be as young as you can be as old as you can, as long as you're just within the community aspects, work with the people, stakeholders, and come with the innovation. That's the beauty of needs for water.
Excellent. So this is the last slide here. There's a QR code there if you wish to see a little more about our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's time, we can take some questions.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I think there's both Almoquin and Leads for Water are quite doing remarkably well in terms of access to water and safe water, sanitation, and rest. And we have seen in the fights during this presentation the remarkable work you have been doing, and thumbs up to that. And we pray the work continues and also reach out to many countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where access to water supply is a very, very huge problem. Not even access to it, but how safe is the water? Thank you so much. So I will open the floor for Q&A. No, there's going to be some questions, comments, but from my own perspectives, I would like to have 1 or 2 questions with regarding to this animal drinking trough and human drinking stand. How far apart do you think these systems need to be in place? For example, how many meters or how close they should, or how wide it should be. And in terms of water purification, what are those systems that that are locally made, but that are affordable, but quite uh, uh, quite important, because without those purifications, I have seen many communities in rural Nigeria where they got infected with one or two waterborne diseases, and the problem becomes so enormous. So, what are those equipments, maybe that can be locally made, or through a technology transfer that they can be replicated in across sub-Saharan Africa, whereby you don't need to go and spend much to get these purifiers, even though these purifiers are mostly sophisticated. If there is anyone you think of that communities here in sub-Saharan Africa can really adopt to help uh, have a very safe drinking water. Thank you.
No, great questions. I'll sort of respond to the second one. Asman might have some thoughts in the first one there about animals, because that was, I think, project 3 was, or 4 was sort of dealt with that one. In terms of technology, we did see there are concerns with some of the systems that are brought in if the systems are complicated or they use expensive membranes and whatnot, that when those initial membranes, once they run out and maybe some spares were lent, it's just too expensive to maintain. It's too expensive to replace the filters. So we're seeing, just from our activity here, people are reaching out to us, and we're seeing there's a lot of innovation, I think, using more locally sourced materials or locally available that will be more sustainable. There's also the power considerations. Here in North America, we use 60 hertz, with most of the rest of the world is 50 hertz. Then you also end up with imperial versus metric. And these sort of things can become large issues if you are in a remote community with limited access to bringing in those materials. It'd be wrong side. Anything local will be metric, whereas the plant itself is in imperial, or the electricity is different. So then involves a transformer. There's a lot of complexity that can be brought if a company comes in and brings in something expensive that it's not really good from a long-term perspective. It'll run until it stops, and then there's nobody there, local expertise. So bringing in that training, paying a lot of attention to what is available in a local perspective. And that was part of the reason that we wanted to start the ambassador program, because it's going to bring a lot of grassroots ideas. And there's a lot of good, well-intentioned people that have ideas about what they can do to improve WASH. And so we really want to tap into those and create an impact, a positive impact on the communities. Asman, did you have any comments to say on the
Yes, I do. So one of the
dual
things
use
that
for water source?
yes, those are when we're doing in terms of the rural area, where we found that sometimes people, when they're relocating or building, they put the animal on the upstream, and the human on the downstream, and those are the ones that created contamination. So if they at least a minimum about 40 to 60 meters from the animal, and always the human should be on the upstream, and animal should be on the downstream. And then be fenced. The animal should be fenced. So by doing just the distance on upstream and downstream, you cut a lot of contamination with water.
Perfect. There is a question from Haruna Yusuf, where he's saying, from your field experience, what are the most common mistakes organizations make when implementing WASH interventions in humanitarian settings, and how can they be avoided?
I think one of the things that we found out, most of Go ahead. You want to answer, Mike?
Oh, one thing I observed. Yeah, I had some thoughts, but go ahead if you have. I'll fill in afterwards.
Sure. So one of the things always I've learned is in terms of wash, always perform the soft skills before the hard skills, and always when you're doing implemented training, monitoring system, and have your all material to be like within the local made. Don't supply something from Europe or North America, and that won't last and cannot be fixed. So always do inbound sources of your material and training. Go ahead, Mike.
Well said. I noticed with a lot of the hand wash stations, the actual hand wash facility itself with the sink and the taps was good. But what I saw was failing was the thin walled plumbing that would go to such a unit. And it wasn't buried well, so people had stepped on it or it cracked, and basically it rendered the whole hand wash station uh, obsolete, aside from the mirror that was on it. Um, so a lot of investment spent on these hand wash stations, and the unit itself is good, but the connections to it are it's not well installed. And the pipes are just sitting on the ground, or and they're, you know, tripping hazards, or they just become cracked. So I think if you're gonna if you want to make sure the installation is done well as well. So there really needs to be that hands-on at the site supervision to make sure everything is according to, you know, a certain standard. And I think you just get a lot more mileage use out of the efforts that, because there is a lot of great effort that is being done, and it's heartbreaking to see all these water stations that in theory could be working and it would improve everyone's life, but they're not. And it'd be really good to see uh, a lot better installation.
Any other question? Any other question? You can post your question on the chat box, or yeah, there is another question from Safia. She said, how can local communities be better involved in the planning and long-term management of water systems?
One thing we looked at was sort of a wash club. You could start those in schools, and just is, you know, there's a lot of material not that can be gathered and discussed, and you know, elevate that level of awareness, and start generating some ideas at the local level to implement some wash improvements. So that would definitely be one vehicle. We're trying, we've got this initiative here with the ambassador program, which right now we've just got to expand that scope. We're currently focused mainly on East Africa, but with more, you know, as this effort grows, maybe we can cover greater number of countries and in different regions as well.
Okay, any other question, comments from other participants? Just raise your hand or unmute your mic. We are given 1 more minute. There is Mumuzo Emmanuel. I think this is a comment, but let's read. Say thank you for the interesting and insightful presentation. Looking at this image that was taken during the Watch 2025 survey, do you think there can be the best technology that can be implemented to avoid this deepening of containers? The underground water tank, then also briefly take me through what was the water source for this storage tank and what were the results from the water quality assessment done?
With this one,
So
go ahead.
chlorine is probably the for disinfection, chlorine is likely your best that. It's readily available, it's economical, and it's effective. It's widely what's used throughout the world. There are other techniques for at least primary disinfection, such as ozone or UV, but chlorine is liquid. It's basically liquid bleach. Is readily available, and tanks should be periodically cleaned out as well. And you can drain the tank. You can spray it with a higher concentration of the chlorine, the sodium hypochlorite. Let it sit for a bit, rinse it out, and then refill it. So if an annual clean of tanks, I think would help. Or like that one tank that we had, the underground, it didn't have a lid on it. So that's an obvious source of potential contamination. So you want to make sure your water storage is sealed and not just open to the elements like that. Things could drop in that hatch. And we actually looked inside the tank, and there were a lot of water bottles and other things that shouldn't be in that tank. So, and water quality, I think Asmahan knows a bit more on that subject there. So I'll let her carry on.
Yeah, what one of the thing is they could have done is putting the tank sort of elevated higher, like other schools, instead of on the ground, because this will not only source of contamination within the bottles, but the kids might be the source itself to contaminate. And in terms of the water quality, because of what the kids are not proper handling of the bottles, as you can see, been thrown away. Like in all the aspects, it was not drinkable, and they still drink, the kids. So one of the school that we did on project, I'm not sure, in one of the Oromia school, is to hire somebody. Like we hired 2 helpers, and that really makes a difference in terms of maintaining the latrine and cut the sources of contamination and separate the hand wash from the washroom and latrine spaces of water use.
There's also plumbing infrastructure that could help, such as backflow preventers that would prevent any back siphonage of contaminated water into your water supply. Or using air gaps, which is a great suggestion on elevated tanks, because you naturally can create that air gap.
All right. I think you can call it today, because you have really done well. And thank you so much, Asmahan. Despite the fact that it's 4 a.m., you were able to make it. We are very grateful for that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
It was a pleasure to be invited.
Yes. And I don't know if it's okay to share the slides presentation. If not, then we can upload the video on our YouTube channel, and we share it on our social media handles, so that from now on, people can tap into it and get more insight on what you people have been doing, and see the quite remarkable work both Al Maquin and Needs for Water is doing in sub-Saharan Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Then you have a restful day, and thank you so much for coming and for participating.
Thank you.